Working from home, you feel so alone. Cabin fever's running high. 5 o'clock comes, it's happy hour, but all you do is sigh. When the cocktail hit the spot, it's time to just relax, mix up a bit of history. Go ahead, put the kids to bed, and please drink responsibly. Join me for happy hour history. Hey everybody, Kim McCann here, program developer at Prairie, and your host for another episode of Happy Hour History, the series where we mix up historical cocktails and talk about some alcohol-related history. Tonight's episode, our featured spirit is rum. Now, I promised last week that I would not talk like a pirate the whole episode, but I didn't promise that I wouldn't talk about pirates. And to talk about rum, we do need to talk about pirates, just for a little bit. So there's been a long association between pirates and rum, going back to the 1500s. And there are also associations too with legitimate seafaring folk. So as early as 1731, the British Royal Navy had in paperwork that it gave a ration of 1 pint of rum daily for every 1.5 soldiers, or sailors, I should say. So that means that, if my math is right, and it's probably not, but if it is, that means the expectation was that sailors were drinking 3/4 of a pint of rum daily. If you do that on a Friday night, that's one thing, but if you're doing it every day, that's a lot of rum. But it's not just the British sailors who were drinking a lot of rum. American colonists drank a lot of rum too. In the colonies, Americans were drinking about 3.7 gallons of rum per person annually. And that's a lot. And by the 1770s, there were over 140 rum distilleries along the New England coastline, producing over 4 million gallons of rum annually. On top of that, the American colonies were importing about 4 million more gallons of rum. So that's 8 million gallons of rum every year for a population that at the time was about 2.1 million. Again, don't challenge me on math, but that's a lot of rum. It must be said that all of that rum production was part of a much larger, not so proud time in our history, because rum production was a part of and relied upon triangle trade. What that meant was that the rum that was being produced in New England was being manufactured, bottled, and then sent over the ocean to Africa, where that rum was then traded for slaves. Once that trade took place, those slaves were transported to the Caribbean, where they were traded for sugarcane and molasses, and then that was transported back to New England, and the whole trade triangle started again. Rum was definitely the spirit of choice for American colonists, but all of that changed in the 1760s with the Sugar Tax Act. What that did was place an import tax on rum that increased its price to be about 300% more than locally produced whiskey. That'll change your mind pretty quick. So instead, what happened was that farmers saw an opportunity to continue to make a revenue, an even greater revenue, off the grain that they were already growing. And as a country, we started to really like whiskey. But rum's making a comeback, and we're going to make 2 cocktails today with rum. The Rum Daisy and the Knickerbocker. Alright, so let's get down to making our first cocktail, which is the Rum Daisy. Now, the Daisy is a variety of cocktail that can be made interchangeably with different alcohols. Today we're going to make a rum version. So the original recipe calls for 3 to 4 dashes of gum syrup, 2 to 3 dashes of maraschino or curacao, the juice of half a lemon, 1 wine glass of Santa Cruz rum, and some seltzer water. So now let me talk just for a moment about substitutions. So the gum syrup we talked about in the last episode. So I'm using, again, that jacked up sugar syrup. So 2 parts sugar to 1 part water, and then made as a regular simple syrup. And instead of maraschino, what I'm using is some cherry liqueur. So if you've got cherry liqueur at home, that's fantastic. You can use it, or you can use curacao if you'd like. I like cherries and lemons together, so I went for the maraschino. And I'm using some cherry liqueur from Hotel Tango. If you don't have any at home, lucky you, Hotel Tango is doing curbside service, so you can pick some of that up. That's what we're going to use today. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get that lemon juice in there, and then we're going to add our cherry liqueur. I'm excited, this is going to be really good. And then our gum syrup. Remember, this is pretty thick. I'm going to give that a stir. Now the recipe calls for you to shake it, and you should accept that my cocktail shaker is already loaded for the next cocktail. So I'm going to make sure I'm stirring that up really well. I'm going to be very aggressive with it since I'm not shaking it like the recipe says. I want to make sure that that gum syrup and that alcohol and everything gets mixed up really well. And then once that is done, I am going to take one of my big fancy ice cubes and drop that in there. And then the recipe calls for Apollinaris water or seltzer water, and we're going to use good old club soda because that's what's on hand. And fill that glass right up. Oh, look at that color. That is a beautiful color. Now, you could top this with a lime garnish if you wanted to. Gosh, it's awful pretty to look at. And it looks sort of like, well, it looks very autumnal. Let's see how it tastes. Oh, wow. I'm not gonna lie, this tastes like a backyard campfire at dusk. I mean, it's just really, that is a pretty complex thing for such a simple cocktail. I like it. Oh, that's very good. But we need to move on to our second cocktail, the Knickerbocker. So what exactly is a Knickerbocker? Well, just like New York is the city so nice they named it twice. They also named their basketball team twice because the New York Knicks, or the New York Knickerbockers, are actually the New York New Yorkers. Well, maybe. You see, just like the word Hoosier, which means somebody from Indiana, there's a lot of question about where that word comes from and what it really means. There are a lot of different derivations of the story that explain where Hoosier comes from, but my most favorite is the one that goes like this. Apparently, people from Indiana were pretty rough fighters in the early days. And there's a story that goes that 2 folks from Indiana were having a brawl one night. Now, these folks were known for biting, and in the heat of the fight, one man bit off another man's ear and spit it onto the floor of the tavern. Another man entered the tavern just as the fight was dying down, found the ear on the ground, picked it up, and yelled, "Hoosier!" And that's where the word Hoosier comes from. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's my favorite story. Just like that, Knickerbocker has lots of different tales about what it means. None quite as inventive as that. But the most reliable one is that it either A, comes from the knee breeches or knickers that the early Dutch settlers wore in New York, or that it came from Washington Irving, who had a friend named Herman Knickerbocker. And it's on Herman Knickerbocker that he based the character Diedrich Knickerbocker, was the main character in History of New York, which was published in 1809. Now, the word Knickerbocker from the German means toy marble baker. Bacher meaning baker, and Knicker being the schoolboy slang for a homemade marble or a clay marble, as they were made of in those days. And the sound that those marbles made when they hit each other, which was nichen. So nichen became a knicker, and Knickerbocker was a toy marble maker. I don't know. For us, it just means cocktail. The original Knickerbocker, named the Knickerbocker for whatever reason, I'm not sure, calls for this: the juice of half a lime or a lemon, 3 teaspoonsful of raspberry syrup, 1 wine glass of rum, 3 dashes of curacao. We are going to make a couple of substitutions. Well, just one substitution. First of all, I'm choosing lime to go with the raspberry. That's my preference, personally. And instead of curacao, we are going to be using some orange liqueur from Hotel Tango. You can use curacao, you can use triple sec. Don't use blue curacao. Again, you know my feelings about drinking blue things. The raspberry simple syrup is just a regular simple syrup with some fruit added to it. So it is 1 part sugar to 1 part water, and then I do it with 1 part fresh or frozen fruit. And you bring all of those things up to a boil, let them simmer for about 15 minutes, a little bit longer if you're using fresh fruit. And then because it's raspberries and it's got lots of seeds in it, I strain it through a cheesecloth, and that's my raspberry simple syrup. So let's get down to the cocktail. In my shaker here, I have got the juice of half a lime, as well as some zest or peel from the lime. And then I'm going to add some nicely hammered ice right on top of that. Those who saw the last episode know what I'm talking about. Then I'm going to add my raspberry syrup and my orange cello or curacao if you're using that. And then I'm going to add my rum. So once again, that wine glass full, that's 2 ounces. So let's add that. So we put that in, and then we are supposed to shake it well and strain it into a cocktail glass. So I've got my cocktail glass here and my shook up Knickerbocker. Certainly is a pretty color. Let's see how it tastes. That's really nice. You get that sort of slightly musky, smoky, leathery taste of the rum that comes through, and just a hint of the raspberry to sort of fruitify that with that lime juice. I might try the next one with lemon juice and see how the taste changes, but that is a really nice, refreshing cocktail. So all in all, 2 great cocktails made with rum. Probably the drink that really got America drinking in the early days. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, that you'll make some of these cocktails. If you do, take a photo of them and share it with us. We'd love to see you enjoying your happy hour. As always, I would like to say a big thank you to Hotel Tango, who's kind enough to share some of their spirits with us. Right now, it's very important to support local businesses, and they are a local business. They're open for curbside service. Check them out if you have any spirit needs, and they will get you straight. So next week, we'll be back again with another episode, and our spirit will be rye. So that's whiskey. We're doing whiskey again. Whiskey's real popular. Join us. Cheers. Yeah.